All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to tackle something huge, the legal foundation of the European Union. Now, I know, that sounds super complicated and maybe a little dry, but we're going to look at it through a really simple lens. Imagine the EU isn't a political bloc, but a massive house being built for a whole continent. And we're going to look at the blueprints, the treaties.
So just think about this for a second. How on earth do you build one single house for an entire continent? Especially a continent that, was still covered in the scars of a devastating war. This was never just about politics. It was about architecture. The goal was to build a structure so interconnected that the people living inside could never tear it down again. That's the real story here.
So, here's our game plan for today. Think of it as the guided tour. We'll start with why this house for Europe was even necessary. Then we'll check out how they poured the foundation. We'll see how it got bigger and bigger over the years, understand the house rules that keep everything running, and finally, what happens when someone decides they want to pack up and leave? First things first, why even build this thing? Well, this European house wasn't built out of ambition. It was born out of just complete and utter desperation. You had a continent that had literally ripped itself to pieces twice in just 30 years. A new plan, a new blueprint wasn't just a nice idea. It was an absolute necessity for survival. And this gets to the absolute heart of the idea, coming straight from the Schuman Declaration. The goal wasn't just to sign another peace treaty and hope for the best. No, the plan was to actually re-engineer the continent's plumbing. By weaving together the economies, especially the key ingredients for war, coal and steel, the idea was to make another war materially impossible. I mean, think about it. It's kind of hard to secretly build tanks if your old rival is literally your business partner in the steel factory. Okay, so with that big goal set, the construction crew got to work. Let's talk about the first, most crucial steps, the treaties that really formed the concrete foundation for this entire European project. And you can see just how practical they were being. It all kicked off in 1951 with the ECSC Treaty. That was the masterstroke, putting coal and steel under a shared roof. That was the first concrete pour. Then just 6 years later, which is no time at all, really, the Treaty of Rome came along and massively expanded the project. It went from just managing war materials to building a whole common market. This was like building out the entire ground floor. All right, so we've got the foundation poured. Solid, right? But a foundation isn't a house. The next few decades were all about building upwards, adding new floors, new rooms, and a whole lot of new rules, transforming that early community into the European Union we know today. And these were the huge architectural upgrades. The Maastricht Treaty in the early 90s, whoa, that was a game changer. It wasn't just adding another floor, it was basically renaming the entire building to the European Union and drawing up the plans for a single currency, the euro. Much later, the Lisbon Treaty came in and did a massive renovation. It took all the old blueprints and extensions and streamlined them into the two core documents that run the place today, the TEU and the TFEU. Okay, so the house is getting bigger, more people are moving in, you're going to need some house rules, right? And this is where the EU's legal system comes in, and honestly, it's one of the most unique setups anywhere in the world. And this slide breaks it down perfectly. So, EU law, that's the master blueprint. It's the building code for the whole structure. It covers the stuff that affects everyone, like the shared market or safety standards. National law, that's you deciding what color to paint your apartment and where to put the couch. You've got freedom inside your own space, but you can't just decide to knock down a wall that holds up the floor above you. And all of this boils down to one really unique idea, the EU legal order. This isn't about creating some giant super state that wipes out countries. It's more like a club, a voluntary one, where all the members agree to pool some of their decision-making power, their sovereignty, but only in very specific areas where they figure they can get more done together than they ever could alone. So for decades, the story was all about expansion, adding new wings, new residents, building higher. But then came the big question, what happens when someone actually wants to move out? This became the ultimate stress test for the entire building's structure, Brexit. And here's the thing that surprised a lot of people. The option to leave was always in the blueprints. It's right there in Article 50. It clearly says that any country has the right to decide to leave. The original architects actually planned an emergency exit, even if they really hoped no one would ever have to use it. And the instructions for leaving are spelled out pretty clearly. Step 1, a country formally tells the EU, we're out. That starts the clock. Step 2, the lawyers get involved for some very intense negotiations to figure out the terms of the split. And step 3, the EU treaties just stop applying to that country either when a deal is reached or after 2 years, whichever comes first. It's a very structured process. So you might be thinking, why all the bureaucracy? Why make it so formal? Well, the EU's own top court explained it. The whole point of Article 50 was never to punish anyone. It was to make sure this incredibly complicated separation could happen in an orderly fashion. It's about preventing a chaotic, messy demolition that could damage the rest of the house. It's damage control. And that's why Brexit was so much more than just politics. It was a real-life constitutional stress test. It was like a controlled earthquake simulation for the entire building. And activating this legal process, for the very first time, revealed some of the deep underlying tensions in the whole European project, that constant tug of war between being your own country and being part of a bigger team. Which brings us right back to the very first page of the blueprint, Article 1 of the treaty. Look at the goal they set out, creating an ever closer union. Think about those words. The whole direction of travel, the entire architectural plan for over 60 years, was about bringing people closer together. And that leaves us right here, with a massive question mark. The whole European house was designed with the idea that more and more people would want to move in, not move out. We know there's a door to leave, but as a building that was designed for togetherness, for an ever closer union, fundamentally strong enough to handle the pressure when its residents start to drift apart, that's the real test. And honestly, the answer is still being written.